Hello everybody and welcome! I'm your battle instructor, Luna, and today we're going to talk about conquering the most fearsome creature of all the ones you're going to face in school, the dread Math Beast. The Math Beast is a creature so cunning, it's convinced your teachers that it must be included in every year of your high school studies and that you need it for most degrees. Most students dread their math class knowing that this thing with X's for teeth and Y's for eyes is going to jump out at them and attempt to eat their brains. You know the feeling, scribbling away at your test as the clock ticks ominously in the corner, reminding you that you don't know this stuff after all, and by the time you have to turn the paper in, your brain hurts. But what if there was a way to keep it from eating us? What if, even for those of us who just know we're bad at math, there was some magic weapon to make the math beast follow our every command? Well, it might not be magic, but there are definitely some ways for you to conquer the math beast. Let's get started. You might be thinking, well, it's all nice and good that you're saying I can be good at math, but I've heard that before, and nothing's changed. Aha! You want proof, I hear? Here's the testimony of one of the teachers I talked to about this topic. I believe that a student that sees success in small things at first, then sees continued success or growth, but begins to believe that they are better at math than they thought, that they can do it. And listen to this. I have seen it happen to an entire class I taught. It took time, but by the end of the first semester, they were all much better students, not only academically, but their overall attitudes were better as well. So, you want this to be you? Then let us charge forward! The first step to conquering the math beast is to understand it. Any well-developed villain has reasons for what they do, and the math beast is no different. Believe it or not, he has good intentions. In fact, he helps us out through our daily lives. Did you cook a meal for yourself today? Then you had to use fractions, addition or subtraction, counting at the very least. When you shop, you have to keep track of your money and the item's costs. Most jobs, even ones that seem as far from math as possible, use it. For instance, do you happen to be, or know someone who is, a hairdresser? Then, when they dye hair, they have to use ratios to make sure that the customer doesn't walk out with sad, green hair instead of a pretty blue. The math beast insists on us dealing with him in school because he really is helpful to us outside of it. The real problem we have when facing him isn't that he's not useful, it's that we don't speak the same language he does. That's a big deal. I mean, if you were enrolled in a Chinese language class, and you didn't already know Chinese, would you expect to ace the test if all you did was listen to lecture, complete the homework that day, using your notes as a cheat sheet of course, and then not look at the material again until 5 minutes before the test? If so, you must be some sort of language wizard. But, for most of us, that's just not going to work. So why do we expect it to work against the math beast? You might be thinking, okay, but you still haven't told us how to do better. If so, you're completely right. It opens up a question, though. If we don't understand the language of the math beast, then why? What's standing in our way? If we know that, then we can fix it. So, I did a survey. It was very informal, and I didn't use techniques that you have to in order to apply what you learned to most people for certain. It does provide an interesting jumping off point, though. The students I surveyed, all high schoolers that said they were bad at math and didn't have the grade they wanted in their class, claimed that the main reason they had that grade was because they had a bad foundation in and or experience with math. The second biggest problem they said they had was a little surprising: low self-confidence. Now, before we figure out how to do battle with these issues, I wanted to get another perspective. I also surveyed math teachers, asking them similar questions as I asked the students. The teachers said that the main reason students that claimed to be bad at math, that also had bad grades, had the grade they did, was that they didn't pay attention in class and that they didn't do their homework. I thought this was pretty interesting because almost all the students I surveyed said they did do their homework. I figure either the ones I surveyed happened to be the subgroup of bad at math kids that also did their homework, or most students do turn in their homework, but the teacher's definition of kids doing it is different than the student's definition of doing it. Like if the teacher can tell that the student didn't really try or cheated, but from the student's point of view, they turned it in, so it counts. So then, we know the first step to conquering the math beast, and we know what our weaknesses against it are. Now for the second step. Draw your weapons, soldier. Student. What weapons, you ask? I have 5 for you to try out. I highly suggest using them together, not just picking one out and saying, this'll be enough. Using these weapons shouldn't take a whole lot more time than you already spend on math, but if you want to become, quote, good at math, then you'll find time for it, just like you find time for your favorite hobby that you've managed to get good at, or your favorite extracurricular or sport. So, weapon number 1 is to engage with your homework. We already mentioned that there's possibly some sort of disconnect between teachers and students when it comes to homework, and here's the problem. When we do our homework by simply rewriting what was in our notes or in the lecture without trying to understand the problems, then completing the homework teaches us nothing. As you do your homework, try to ask yourself why that's the answer, and try to do at least half of the questions without referencing your notes until you're done with the problem. After answering it, always check your work against your notes or the answer guide if one is provided. Otherwise, you don't know if you're practicing correctly. You could just be doing the same wrong thing repeatedly. That brings us to weapon number 2. Actually take notes. I know some of you out there don't, whether because you think you'll remember just fine without it, or because you think it makes it harder for you to focus on what's being said. Interestingly enough, since taking notes in math class pretty much just means copy down what the teacher writes, it doesn't take much attention away from listening, especially as you practice. It also gives you something to do that keeps you on topic. One of the students I surveyed mentioned that they try really hard to focus in class, but just can't seem to. This student also didn't take notes. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, but there could be a connection there. It makes it a little harder to mentally drift off when you're trying to keep up with what the teacher is writing. Additionally, if you really can't focus while writing, it gives you something more reliable than your memory of the lecture to reference later. Remember, while engaging with your homework. Weapon number 3 targets the issue of bad math foundation. Ask questions. If you're confused in class because you don't understand how the teacher got from what looks like A to C in one step, just raise your hand. Most, if not all, of the teachers I've had experience with want to hear their students' questions. If you're not comfortable asking questions in front of your peers, though, go to the teacher after class. They'll probably give you a couple minutes before the next one begins. If you don't have enough time between classes to do this, shoot them an email as soon as you get a chance. Most teachers, at least in the US, have a school email listed on the school website under directory. They'll probably respond there, but I know recently that some teachers have started using Zoom or Google Meet to answer questions, which is actually a lot easier to discuss the question in. If your question is about something that you supposedly should have learned before now, your teacher will still probably be willing to work with you to get you where you need to be. Ask after class or in an email so you're not pulling them off topic. They might not teach the topic to you directly, depending on what it is and how much or little you understand about it, but they probably will give you resources to look at. Khan Academy has good videos, and YouTube has some decent resources for certain topics. You can also find worksheets online to practice your newfound knowledge with, but be sure to get the ones that come with the answers or that you can look up the question to find the answer. Otherwise, you can't be sure you learned the material properly. Weapon number 4 is to simply review before the test. This does not include cramming or just flicking through your notes and or homework right before the test. That does no good. But from the time that your teacher stops giving homework on a topic all the way till the test, you should spend at least 5 to 10 minutes each day genuinely practicing. That can be doing practice worksheets found online like I talked about a minute ago, or going back to problems you had trouble with in the homework and reworking them on a separate sheet of paper. Additionally, try writing your own step-by-step instructions for a type of problem you struggle with and memorizing them. Again, always check your answers before you finish working a problem so your work is productive. I would suggest checking after every other problem. This alerts you that you need to change something if you're wrong and gives you a confidence boost if you were right. With these 4 weapons, you can conquer the math beast. Some people naturally struggle with math, but there are still some things that you can do in order to best this beast. Engage with your homework, take notes, ask questions, review before the test. But most important is weapon number 5. Take a deep breath, take a break, and remember, you can defeat the math beast. If you get frustrated, walk away for a few minutes, do something you like. Come back fresh and try again because you can do math. Remember what that one teacher said. A student that sees success in small things at first, then continues to see success or growth, begins to believe they are better at math than they thought. Build your small successes, build your confidence, defeat the math beast. Thanks for watching. Now go forth and conquer!